Fawn Weaver, the CEO of Uncle Nears, could go to jail. I know this sounds bad considering the legal troubles she has been in with her liquor and whiskey brand. Uncle Nears has all been civil. But after reading the judge's ruling, it's not looking good for the high energy, high powered, CEO boss lady. And let's be clear here. I think it's very, very important before we get into all of this detail to say that the black community as a whole, the Black Millionaires platform, and James Hill as a media journalist, I'm rooting for Fawn Weaver to come out of this on top. If any type of bad doings was done, make everybody whole, make the investors whole, continue the brand, even if she gets fired. But I want to say that because we have to go through facts and not feelings. And a lot of times when we are discussing situations like this, people always say, oh, you hate black women, you hate your mom, all of this other crazy gaslighting stuff. And I want to make this very clear that this is reporting. This is my job as a journalist. Before we get started, I want to thank all our YouTube supporters. We're on the road to 100,000 subscribers, and we launched an exclusive membership for those who want to invest in our show to support the independent journalism that I was just talking about. So Fawn Weaver have been in a battle of her life, man. So her liquor brand, Uncle Nears, for the people who hasn't heard about it, is famously named after Nears Green, who famously taught Jack Daniels how to distill whiskey, right? Everybody knows the Jack Daniels brand. Their family took it and became a multi-billion-dollar brand that we all know today. I learned about Jack Daniels when I was in college, just like a lot of you guys watching this probably have learned about him, when you was in your early 20s. So before this $108 million lawsuit hit the media, no one knew Uncle Nears, the brand that we all love, was in financial trouble, or the company was drowning in debt. See, if you follow Fawn Weaver on Instagram, like 100,000, 300,000 other people do, you really only see the glitz, the glam, success, entrepreneurship, all of that, whatever that has to offer. She's very high energy. She's very intense during her Instagram lives. She's very intense during her interviews. Her confidence bleeds through, all of the cameras, whatever, it goes straight through the phone. It hits you. You can tell the passion and feel the passion when she's talking about this brand. She's published best-selling books, appeared on some of the largest podcasts, and really gloating about the billion-dollar valuation that this company is supposed to have, and the millions and millions in revenue that the company has, and this $50 million distillery that they built in Tennessee. But apparently behind closed doors, money was going in, money was coming out, but it wasn't in the best interest of the investors or the banks that loaned them the money. Now, to grow a business, entrepreneurs use three traditional ways to raise capital. The most common way is growing through revenue, or we call it bootstrapping. This is what most black-owned businesses do because there's a lot of discrimination and, you don't really come from money, so you just got to hustle, right? This is what a lot of black people hustle, right? But the second way is through investors, angel investors, venture capital, private equity. And the third is traditional loans from a financial institution like a bank, credit union, etc. Now, Uncle Nears chose to lean into two out of the three. So, yes, they did raise money from investors, but that wasn't their bread and butter that funded everything. The bulk of their capital came from loans from a credit union called Farm Mid-America. Now, this is where everything starts to blow up and gets murky. So, on July 22nd, 2022, Uncle Nears entered a major credit deal with Farm Credit. So they've only been in business probably about 3-4 years, and this is going really, really bad. So Uncle Nears entered into a credit agreement with Farm Credit Mid-America. The court said that the initial structure of the loan was like a $35 million revolving loan. So think about that as like a $35 million credit card or something like that. Revolving loan, and then a $20 million term loan. So think about the $20 million term loan as like a mortgage. After you pay it off, it's done. So they got $55 million in lines of credit 35 is revolving, 20 is term. Okay. So Farm Credit said that they wasn't paying their bills, so they sent multiple defaults. Uncle Nearest responded with letters asking for extensions, begging to restructure, proposing different ideas, even including like a forbearance agreement with lower interest rates, interest-only payments. So, as soon as they get the money, it started going south. So the parties agreed on a forbearance agreement on April 15th. Uncle Nearest agreed to pay down a $7.5 million to report on weekly cash flow and to give a 13-week budget, which is like a quarterly budget, a minimum, and to have a minimum cash position of 1.5 million. Farm Credit alleged that even with this, they failed to meet the requirements, and then they ended up filing a federal lawsuit on July 28th, 2025. That's when all of this hit the streets, and they said that Uncle Nearest owed them about $108 million in principal and interest, and they also accused the whiskey giant of giving a bad accounting of the barrels, the receivables, and all of the debt and all of the asset that the company had. So they basically saying, hey, you guys actually misled us on what you have, and all of your financial information is inaccurate. So we need to put you under a receivership to figure out where is this money at that you guys actually have. So on August 8th of 2025, there was a court hearing about a receivership. Now, the thing about this court hearing is Fawn Weaver was not there. It was only the co-founder, her husband, Keith Weaver. So the judge told the parties not to sell any assets, especially any whiskey barrels, not to discuss the hearings, especially on social media. And we all know Fawn Weaver did not follow that instruction because she was hit with a gag order temporarily, and then she went ballistic, and I think she has a new gag order on her. So the judge orders a receiver, Charles Ashley Jr. So he was the receiver, and he is the person that is meant to control all operations, shifting that control from Fawn Weaver and Keith Weaver and any executive in the company. And I'm sorry, the judge appointed Philip Young Jr. That's his name, the receiver. I just thought about that. So a receiver, for people who don't know, third party, they're responsible for like unbiased reporting, straightening out the finances, painting a clear picture for the investors, the people who are owed money, and to straighten things out. So late in 2025, the Weavers, Fawn Weaver and Keith, filed a motion to regain control of the company, arguing that the receivership was hurting their brand and the sales of the company. Because multiple vendors got to canceling their orders due to bad press. I mean, Fawn Weaver is a PR princess, so bad press really hurts her, right? So the judge found May 2026 that Uncle Nearest, the brand, was insolvent with more than $208 million in debt, and the Farm Credit Union that filed the lawsuit is owed more than $120 million. This is getting out of hand. Also, the judge said for purposes in that order that under Uncle Nearest, under Fawn Weaver's leadership, it appeared that Fawn Weaver engaged in fraudulent conduct, trying to conceal a $20 million loan involving the billionaire music icon Jay-Z. Now, this is not the same as a financial crime. The courts are saying she committed fraud, but this is not a criminal case. So at this point, the judge is just saying, hey, yes, Fawn Weaver did something fraudulent. The court observed, this is a direct quote, the court observed Fawn Weaver's demeanor during February 9th hearing. It has been noted that her testimony has changed during the course of these proceedings, and it is where her testimony has been in tension with the truth. Now, that was a direct quote from the judge, by the way. This is a legal way. This is a legal way of saying Fawn Weaver, we have caught you in your lies. Your story keeps changing, and your demeanor is unprofessional and out of place. Now, she went on Instagram Live talking about the bankruptcy is they filed bankruptcy, even though she didn't have the right to file bankruptcy. Fawn Weaver has been tripping. So here's what the alleged fraudulent activity by Fawn Weaver occurred. This is exactly coming from the 62-page opinion from the judge that is on the case. So to understand, we have to take a step back, right? Let's look at the real issue at hand. The real issue at hand is we are familiar with the Uncle Near's brand, right? Okay. The liquor whiskey brand. The Weavers, Fawn Weaver and her husband, built about 9 to 10 businesses on the side that are adjacent, separate companies owned by her and her husband that they funnel a bunch of money through. And this is where the issue comes. So as far as we know it, the companies all as a whole, the 9 or 10 businesses together with Uncle Near's, it's a successful business, probably $1 billion brand, but broken up into 9 to 10 pieces, leaving Uncle Near's, the holding company, to service all the debt and pay all the bills. They are struggling. So here are some of the separate businesses that they built outside of the Uncle Near's whiskey brand. They built a $50 million distillery, separate business. They have one of the largest bars in America inside that distillery or attached to that distillery on the same campus, separate business. They have a touring business where they have tours and people from the community come look and customers come look at the distillery and how beautiful it is, separate business. They have a restaurant on the campus, separate business. They have a separate liquor brand, separate. You get the point, right? So in comes billionaire Jay-Z. Now, he has a venture capital firm named after the projects he grew up in called Marcy Ventures. Marcy Ventures, throughout all of his financial mismanagement, Uncle Near's, throughout all his financial mismanagement, managed to secure a $20 million loan from Marcy Ventures. Right? Okay, but instead of the money going to Uncle Near's, the money was designed to go to Uncle Near's. It went to a side company wholly owned by Fawn Weaver. Now, this company owns the majority of the stock that Uncle Near's have that's owned by Fawn Weaver, which is like 30%. This company is called Grant Sidney, and this is where the fraudulent activity heats up, according to the judge. Now, the judge say, and I quote, Fawn Weaver is not credible. Her testimony has changed and has been in intentions with the truth. He said this multiple times, saying it in different ways throughout the 62-page document. In so many words, Fawn Weaver has been lying. So here's the overall breakdown of what the judge is accusing Fawn Weaver of doing with that $20 million that came from Jay-Z's Marcy venture. Okay, so Uncle Near's executed a promissory note, which means they took out a loan that could be converted into ownership shares in the future that will go to Jay-Z's venture capital firm. So they loaned them $20 million. So either you got to pay me my $20 million back, or that can be converted into equity in the company. So once the deal went through, Jay-Z's venture capital firm wired the $20 million. It was deposited into Uncle Near's bank account. Nothing wrong with that. Then it was later transferred to Grant Sidney, which is owned solely by Fawn Weaver, where the 30% outstanding shares in Uncle Near's is at. Okay. Now, Fawn Weaver, why would you do this? She got on the stand and testified that she moved these funds to her Grant Sidney side account because she did not want the funds to be snatched by Farm Credit, and she needed to ensure that Uncle Near's could actually continue operating during the forbearance and negotiations. So she used the $20 million as a negotiating tool against Farm Credit because she knew they were going to take the money. Okay. Once the money hit Fawn Weaver's account, here's where things get murky. She transferred it from Uncle Near's. Fawn then started distributing the money back to Uncle Near's and tracking this money on the debts owed to Grant Sidney, even though Uncle Near's was the company that legally took out the loan. So in layman terms, because I know you guys are probably like, okay, what does all of this mean, right? In layman terms, Uncle Near's, under Fawn Weaver's leadership, got a $20 million loan from Jay-Z's venture capital firm. Nothing wrong with that. I think we all can agree that nothing is wrong with that, right? Okay. Fawn Weaver then transferred the whole $20 million to her side company. Big problem. I guess we all can agree that's a red flag, right? Okay. We on the same page. Then Fawn Weaver then distributed the money back to Uncle Near's as a loan, making it appear that her company, Grant Sidney, is owed the money. Big problem, red flag. We can all agree on that. So think about this, right? This is what I want you guys to think about. If this fraud scheme goes as planned, the Uncle Near's holding company that we all know you buy the whiskey from could end up paying the loan back twice. So how does that work? Okay, they pay it once back to Jay-Z's firm, or they give up the equity in the company from the shares. But then on the books, Uncle Near's is paying back Fawn Weaver's company, Grant Sidney, which they're going to pay back because Fawn Weaver is the executive and she will be in control of the money. So the judge did acknowledge that ultimately the money did go to Uncle Near's. But the concealment of the loan and trying to make it appear as if it was a loan from Fawn Weaver's company, Grant Sidney, is what established the fraudulent conduct. So the misrepresentation, this is a direct quote from the judge, the misrepresentation carries considerable weight. Okay, that is like, let me give you guys an example that we all can understand. That is like if I get a loan for $1 million from a bank to rehab a commercial property and we all are investors in this property, right? But then I send the money to my personal account. And then I come to a meeting and say, hey guys, I'm giving you an update on the money that we need to finance. I'm going to give you guys $1 million loan. I'm going to give the real estate project $1 million loan from my company. You guys are going to be like, all right, okay, that's good. As long as we got the $1 million. So the judge is saying the issue isn't the money being lost or paid back because the money was never lost. The issue is where the money came from and how you documented it to the investors and to the bank. So you were trying to make it look like you gave the loan and you're the big dog instead of the money coming directly from Jay-Z's company, because they probably wouldn't have did it if they knew it was just going to go to pay the other company. So then a motion was filed by both parties. So they're trying to extend the receivership. Fawn Weaver is trying to get out of the receivership. Her and her husband wants to get control back of the company. So they asked the judge to end the receivership. The receiver, on the other hand, asked the judge to extend his reach over the other 9 companies. Remember I talked about the 9 or 10 companies that Fawn Weaver has control over, her and her husband? The receiver want that. So ultimately, the judge ruled against Fawn Weaver's wishes and her husband's wishes and extended the receivership over to Grant Sidney. Now the company she has 100% control over and the $20 million loan went to that she was doing a fraudulent activity is now in the hands of the receiver along with Uncle Near's. Another blow to Fawn Weaver. So after all of this came out, a recent article from Inc. magazine reported that the troubled whiskey brand may actually be facing federal investigations. Now, this comes as a receivership that was made, as the receiver filed a motion that was made by the receiver noting that the distillery is apparently under federal investigation and that he has obtained the services of another law firm in order to advise the receivership on handling this federal investigation. So now they had to hire separate lawyers, some boutique law firm, I think it's called Oh man, what is that firm called? Sims Funk litigation firm, something like that, right? They're specialized in complex litigation and dealing with federal offenses. So the filing does not say which federal agency is involved, right? So it could be the DOJ, it could be FTC, the SEC. We don't know. But the judge did give the receiver 60 days to return back with additional information describing any further misconduct. Um, this is getting real ugly for Fawn Weaver. Even after they granted the receivership for Grant Sidney, later in the litigation, the judge had asked Fawn Weaver, "Hey, Grant Sidney, can you give me the financial documents from Grant Sidney?" Fawn Weaver gives the company bank account information to the judge, but she only gives one. The receiver gets the information and started going through Fawn Weaver's company, Grant Sidney, and they found additional accounts. So when they asked Fawn Weaver about this on the stand, she said, "Oh, I forgot about it." So now the judge has said, "Okay, fine, you're playing with me. So now I'm gonna extend the receivership to your company and Uncle Nearest because you seem to not remember anything that is going to incriminate you." So now that he gave a 60-day extension to report back on this Fawn Weaver situation, this is not looking good for Fawn Weaver. Whether you lose your job, you lose your company, I understand you built this company and you built this brand from the ground up. It's not worth losing your freedom. It's not. It's really not. I know you're embarrassed. You want to save face. Fine. It's not worth your freedom. Don't do it. Thank you guys for watching. I want to make a deal with you. On my end, I'm going to produce high quality, informative content for you to enjoy and learn from. And on your end, you're going to subscribe down below to the podcast. Now we have a 50-50 deal to build this independent media company together. And if you want to invest with us and ensure our success, subscribe down to the YouTube membership. It really, really helps us hire journalists, hire videographers, and do the investigative journalism and independent journalism that you love and that you learn from.